Take said card.
Here a while back to rehabilitate this.
One. Perfect 1 ounce pour of deliciousness.
This was an old barn. This was a horse barn. And the consequence of what we do is to try and develop things out of existing resources and reinvent their use, if you will. So in the same sense that we created a bed and breakfast out of the silo facilities, here we've taken a barn, and in fact over there are 5 stables. We've gone through the back of the stables. This portion here was a lean-to that covered implements and tractors and so on and so forth. So we've gone through these former horse stables and we've turned them into wine stables. The technology involved in this is really kind of embodied over here against this wall. And you'll see, for instance, here's some samples of enigmatic installations that have been done in other places in the world. This happens to be in Queenstown, New Zealand. And as you can see, the machinery is right here, and they're operated by a card that gets inserted to the slot, and then the individuals make a selection of which wines they want by putting the glass underneath the spout, push the button, and you get an exact, in our case, an exact 1 ounce pour, a tasting of the wine as opposed to a glass of wine. That can be manipulated, but we're choosing to limit through the software to 1 ounce increments. As we will be open, of course, 10 to 6 daily for samplings, and we will have retail wine available here also for sale. Although, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things we're doing and we're trying to promote is the notion that you taste the wine here, and then as you make selections and you want to be guided out to the wineries, one would come to our concierge desk here and meet with our concierge who will give them detailed maps as to how to get to the places, can arrange restaurant visits, appointments at the wineries, directions to the local museums. And as you know, we have 5 rooms available here with our own bed and breakfast, but we anticipate once those are filled, we'll be able to fill the rooms for other B&B operators or hoteliers in the area. So, kind of a tourist bureau on steroids, if you will. Our wine bar over here is not really a bar, and it's probably a misnomer to even suggest that it's a bar, because what it really is this will be our sommelier station. And Todd is arranging to have qualified sommeliers here that will be on staff, particularly during the peak periods, to assist people in their understanding of what is going on here at the AgriVino Wine Center. We want to educate people, assist them in the process of defining the palate, that is to say, discovering what it is they like about wines, and more importantly, why they like those aspects of the wines, and then finally guide them to wineries that are of similar accord, that is, that share the same characteristics. So you can go to one winery and immediately be also pushed on to the next winery that has the kind of wine that you're most likely to enjoy. The reason we did this is because we discovered that after having lots and lots of guests here over the last several years, people were constantly befuddled by, well, where do we go? There's 200 wineries within a half hour of here, so where do we go? What do we do? And what our suggestion ultimately became, well, you know, let's start with what do you like? And so with that key phrase, we kind of built this whole mechanism around it, and that is, we can now tell people if you like XYZ wine, then you're probably going to like ABC wine. And here's how you get to them, and create a body of wines, and to further, I think, also explain the culture of wine and history and its part in our society, believe it or not. I mean, there's more depth to wine than one might think. It's not just consumption of an alcoholic beverage. It's part of a process of enjoying good food, good living, nice lifestyle, and so on and so forth. At least that's what we think. After hours, this place is equipped with a full commercial kitchen. And what our intent is to not even operate the kitchen ourselves, but rather have credentialed catering companies here. So there'll be a spectrum of varying catering companies that will be available to winemakers who may want to entertain. For instance, their case buyers, their distributors. Those that don't have a facility for having tastings of their own can utilize this facility for that purpose. And once again, we think it maximizes the use of the facility and minimizes the cost associated therewith for those who may not have the economic wherewithal to produce something like this themselves. Last thing is, I would say, I mentioned earlier that we've decorated this place in a sort of a gallery-esque style. To that end, we want to feature the local artists of the area, as well as the wineries and the other hospitality resources. And finally, we've actually even put up a big screen television up there. We're going to have all of those vendors who may have their own DVD of their services, for instance, Riedel Glassware, the Willamette Valley Wineries Association, any of the other vendors that may have something to display. And we're also producing our own DVD of the area. The iconoclasts have been examined, although there are some wonderful people, needless to say, the Dickie Rath, the David Letts, and so on of the area. We want to introduce the new iconoclasts as well. The Mike Etzel, certainly Ken Wright, and others of their ilk that are here and that are changing the fabric of the industry, particularly as respects Pinot Noir and related grapes. Well, the card is the means by which you access the machinery. And as you can see here, that's our AgriVino card. But the real magic of the card lies on the back of the card. And the cork in the bottle that you see here is actually an embedded microchip. That allows us to store information such that when a customer comes through and we issue them a card that enables them to get the wine tastings, and let me also mention with emphasis that these are only tastings, and we're only going to allow 10 tastings in any 2-hour period of time, well below the OLCC suggested limit. So we don't want people to be intoxicated. This isn't a wine bar, a place to come and hang out all day. In fact, the good news is we'll have maps to other wine bars and we'll send you there. But anyway, this allows us to keep a history of the tasting event that anybody enjoys while they're here. And then if at a subsequent time they want to know what it was that they tasted, if perchance they call back and say, you know, the third wine I tasted that day was particularly good, and it's a brick house, Pinot Noir or something like that, we'll be able to tell them what you had was a brick house, 1994 Pinot Noir, and which vineyard it was from, and so on and so on and so on. And then, of course, that individual can either contact Brickhouse or we'll facilitate the subsequent acquisition of maybe a case of wine or whatever is necessary.
Now, again, where's the boundary from where you're going to feature?
We are going to be featuring wineries from this area, wineries from the Willamette Valley and surrounding, Yamhill County, I should say, and surrounding counties in the valley. Now, some of these people do source fruits from other places, and from time to time, certain things from maybe a producer here is producing from Washington. I really like Red Mountain. Some of the Red Mountain fruits are really nice, and I think some people are doing it justice here. So those will show up from time to time. But the focus is really going to be on the radius and then just in this area, up into the gorge and the dales and so on and so forth. But and some Southern Oregon as well.
Okay.
Producers, mostly Southern Oregon, is going to be coming from producers located here in the Willamette Valley that are sourcing fruit from Southern Oregon.
So the Ken Wright with the Tyro 7 and...
Precisely, that kind of stuff. And he happens to be sourcing, at least for now, from both Rogue Valley and Red Mountain. So it's going to be... We'll try. I spent a lot of time sitting back and like a puzzle, kind of putting the pieces together, and how's this going to fit, and how am I going to show within the boundaries a really nice snapshot of what it is that's done in the valley, and continue doing that. Two things, and I know this sounds really kind of dorky. I love wine and I love computers. I love playing around and I love technology, I should say, and just I'm an early adopter, and I tend to have a really techie, if you will, background and whatnot, and so I'm playing with both right now in a manner that I didn't know that I was, God, how can I marry the two? Well, here you have it.